The church pew creaked under me as my ex-husband's new wife, Vanessa, leaned forward, her whisper sharp enough to cut. "Hope, you really shouldn't be here." At 38, I thought I'd faced every kind of hurt, but nothing prepared me for her public jab. Or for my son, Caleb, sitting beside me, his small hand tightening in mine, ready to rewrite the moment in a way I'd never forget. The air in St. Luke's Methodist Church was thick with the scent of polished wood and lilies, the morning light filtering through stained glass to cast fractured colors on the pews. At 38, I, Hope, sat in the third row, my navy skirt pressed, my heart a tangle of resolve and unease. It was Caleb's confirmation Sunday, a milestone for my 12-year-old son, and I'd come to celebrate him, to see his shy smile as he stood before the congregation. But Vanessa, my ex-husband Derek's new wife, sat 2 rows ahead, her blonde hair perfect, her presence a reminder of the life I'd lost. Her whispered jab, "Hope, you really shouldn't be here," still burned, a public slight meant to shrink me. I gripped Caleb's hand, his warmth grounding me, but the weight of the congregation's eyes pressed hard, and I wondered if I'd ever escape the shadow of my past. St. Luke's was a small church in our Boise suburb, its community tight-knit, its gossip sharper than the hymnals. I'd been a member for years, singing in the choir before my divorce 3 years ago shattered my place here. Derek and I had been high school sweethearts, married at 22, parents by 25. We'd built a life, messy, but ours, until his affair with Vanessa, then a co-worker, unraveled it. The divorce was brutal, the custody battle over Caleb a war of attrition. I'd kept my head high, working as a nurse, raising Caleb in our modest duplex, but Vanessa's arrival as Derek's wife had shifted the church's gaze. She was younger, polished, a realtor with a megawatt smile, and I was the ex, the one who'd failed. Today was about Caleb, not her. He sat beside me, his tie slightly crooked, his dark hair like Derek's but his eyes mine, hazel, thoughtful. He'd worked hard for this confirmation, memorizing verses, asking questions about faith that made me proud. I'd helped him practice, our evenings filled with laughter over pizza and Bible stories. "This is for you, buddy," my inner voice affirmed, pushing back the sting of Vanessa's words. But her whisper had done its work, drawing glances from Mrs. Carter, the choir director, and the Millers, who'd once invited me to barbecues. I felt exposed, my presence questioned, as if I were an intruder in my own son's moment. I adjusted my skirt, my hands trembling, and tried to focus on the service. Pastor Emily's voice was warm, welcoming the confirmands, but my mind churned. Why did she say it? My inner monologue pressed, anger and hurt colliding. Vanessa's jab wasn't just rudeness, it was a power play, a reminder that she'd won Derek, the church's approval, the life I'd once had. I glanced at her, her head tilted toward Derek, her hand on his arm, and felt a pang of regret. Not for losing Derek, his betrayal had killed that love, but for the community I'd lost, the ease of belonging. Did I fail them, or did they fail me? I wondered, doubt creeping in. I'd poured myself into this church, into my family, but the divorce had painted me as the broken one, while Vanessa shone. A flashback hit, vivid and raw. 2 years ago at Caleb's 10th birthday, I'd hosted a party at our duplex, balloons everywhere, kids running through a sprinkler. Vanessa had dropped Caleb off, her smile tight as she surveyed my small home. "Cute place," she'd said, her tone dripping with pity. I'd smiled back, hiding the sting, but later alone, I'd cried, my hands gripping the sink. Why do I let her get to me? I'd thought, vowing to be stronger. Now in the church, that vow felt fragile, her whisper a fresh wound. I looked at Caleb, his face serious as he followed the hymn, and felt a surge of hope. "He's worth it," my inner voice declared. I'd endure her barbs for him, but I couldn't shake the fear that this was only the beginning. Caleb nudged me, whispering, "Mom, you okay?" His voice, soft but steady, pulled me back. I nodded, squeezing his hand, but his eyes, too perceptive for 12, saw my strain. She's just being mean, he said, glancing at Vanessa, his jaw tight. His protectiveness was a spark, a reminder that I wasn't alone, but it also deepened my unease. He shouldn't have to shield me, I thought, guilt rising. I'd fought to give him stability, to shield him from the divorce's fallout, but Vanessa's words had reached him too, her cruelty a ripple I couldn't stop. Pastor Emily called the confirmants forward, and Caleb stood, his shoulders straight, his tie still crooked. I watched him join the others, his voice clear as he recited his vows, and pride swelled, momentarily drowning the hurt. Derek caught my eye from across the aisle, his nod brief, neutral. Vanessa's smile was fixed, her whispers echo lingering. The congregation clapped, but I felt their glances, a mix of pity and judgment, and my resolve wavered. Maybe she's right, my inner voice whispered, doubt gnawing. Maybe I don't belong here anymore. But Caleb's smile, turning to me from the altar, was a beacon, a reason to stay. As the service ended, Vanessa stood, her voice loud enough to carry. Derek, let's get Caleb for photos. He'll want family pictures. The word family was a deliberate cut, excluding me, and Mrs. Carter's raised eyebrow confirmed it landed. I froze, my heart pounding, the church's warmth turning cold. Caleb hesitated, looking back at me, his expression torn. What's she planning? I wondered, fear and anger rising. This wasn't just a jab, it was a move to erase me, to claim Caleb's moment as hers. The tension coiled, hope and pain wrestling in my chest. I was flawed, too quick to absorb their judgment, too slow to fight back. But I was resilient, and for Caleb, I'd find a way to stand. The service was over, but the real test was coming, and I felt its weight in the church's fractured light. The sanctuary of St. Luke's Methodist Church was emptying, the stained glass dimming as Boise's morning sun hid behind clouds. At 38, I, Hope, stood frozen in the pew, my navy skirt creased, my heart raw from Vanessa's calculated whisper. Hope, you really shouldn't be here, and her louder jab about family photos that excluded me. Caleb, my 12-year-old son, lingered near the altar, his confirmation vows still echoing, his hazel eyes flicking between me and his father, Derek, and stepmother Vanessa. Her words were a public claim on him, a move to shrink my place in his life, and the congregation's sidelong glances burned. I was resilient, but the tension was rising, Vanessa's subtle attacks a warning of something darker, and I felt the ground shifting beneath me, threatening the fragile balance I'd built for Caleb. The church buzzed with post-service chatter, congregants gathering coats, their voices a hum against the creak of pews. Caleb approached, his tie askew, his expression torn. Mom, they want pictures, he said, his voice low, glancing at Vanessa, who stood with Derek, her smile bright but her eyes sharp. Can you come too? Of course, buddy, I said, forcing a smile, my hand on his shoulder. But my inner monologue churned. She's trying to erase me, right in front of him. Vanessa's family comment wasn't just a slight. It was a line drawn, marking me as an outsider. I felt the weight of eyes, Mrs. Carter's pursed lips, the miller's awkward nods, and my chest tightened. Why do I care what they think? I wondered, anger and doubt colliding. I'd rebuilt my life after Derek's affair, my nursing job and our duplex a testament to my strength, but Vanessa's presence made me question my place, not just in the church but in Caleb's world. Derek waved us over, his face neutral, his dark hair flecked with gray. Hope you're welcome to join, he said, his tone polite but distant, a far cry from the boy who'd kissed me under Boise's stars. Vanessa's hand rested on his arm, her smile fixed, a realtor's polish masking her intent. We just want Caleb to have memories with everyone, she said, her voice sweet but laced with something colder. The word everyone felt like a concession, not an invitation, and Caleb's frown told me he sensed it too. Let's do it, I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. We moved to the altar, the photographer arranging us, Derek and Vanessa in the center, Caleb between them, me at the edge. Hope, maybe step in a bit, the photographer said, and Vanessa's slight huff was a needle, subtle but sharp. I stood closer, my arm around Caleb, his warmth a lifeline, but the pose felt wrong, a staged unity that hid the truth. She's claiming him, my inner voice hissed, fear rising. Vanessa's moves, her whisper, her photo jab, were a campaign to redefine family, to push me out, and I wasn't sure how to fight back. A flashback crashed in, vivid and painful. A year after the divorce, Caleb's 11th birthday, I'd taken him to a park, just us, his laughter bright as he swung on the monkey bars. Derek had picked him up, Vanessa in the car, her window down. "Have fun, Caleb," she'd called, then looked at me, her voice low. "You're doing great, Hope, but he needs stability, you know?" The implication that I wasn't enough had stung, but I'd brushed it off, telling myself she was just awkward. Now in the church, I saw the pattern. Her pitying smiles, her helpful comments, each a subtle warning of her intent to take my place. How did I miss this? I wondered, regret gnawing. I'd been too focused on Caleb, on surviving, to see her maneuvering. Back in the present, the photos done, Caleb tugged my hand. "Can we get ice cream later, Mom?" he asked, his voice hopeful, a reminder of our rituals. I nodded, but Vanessa interjected, her tone bright. "Oh, Caleb, we're taking you to that new dessert place tonight, remember? Family outing." Her emphasis on family was deliberate, and Caleb's face fell, his eyes darting to me. "That sounds fun," I said, my voice tight, forcing a smile for his sake. But inside, I was unraveling. She's stealing our moments, my inner struggle raged, anger and fear tangling. I wanted to snap, to call her out, but the church's hum, Pastor Emily's kind nod, the miller's whispers, held me back. I was flawed, too quick to absorb their judgment, too slow to claim my space, but Caleb's hand in mine was a spark, urging me to fight, not for their approval but for him. Derek stepped closer, his voice low. "Hope, let's not make this tense. It's Caleb's day." His words were neutral, but they stung, implying I was the problem. Vanessa's smile widened, her victory subtle but clear. "Exactly," she said, her hand on Caleb's shoulder. "We all want what's best for him." I looked at Caleb, his jaw tight, his eyes searching mine, and felt a surge of resolve. "She doesn't get to rewrite us," my inner voice declared, a quiet fire kindling. But how? Confronting her here in front of everyone would only hurt Caleb, make me the bitter ex. I needed a plan, something stronger than her whispers, something to protect my bond with him. The thought of losing him, not legally, but emotionally, to her polished claim was a fear I couldn't shake. As we left the church, the air cool with coming rain, Vanessa's voice carried, loud enough for nearby congregants. "Caleb, you were so grown up today. We're so proud." The "we" was a stake, claiming his milestone, and Mrs. Carter's approving nod deepened the cut. Caleb pulled me aside, his voice a whisper. "Mom, I don't like how she talks to you. It's not fair." His words were a balm, but also a weight. "He's too young for this," my inner monologue mourned, guilt rising. I knelt, meeting his eyes. "I'm okay, buddy. We're okay. Ice cream tomorrow, just us, yeah." He nodded, but his frown lingered, a sign her barbs were reaching him, reshaping his world. I stood, my heart pounding, the church's parking lot a blur of umbrellas and farewells. Vanessa's campaign wasn't just about me. It was about Caleb, about owning his moments, his love. The tension coiled, hope and pain wrestling. I was resilient, but the stakes were rising, her subtle warnings a prelude to something bigger. I needed to act to shield us, but the how eluded me, a puzzle I'd solve for Caleb, for the family we still were, even in this fractured light. The Boise sky hung heavy with clouds, mirroring the storm brewing in my heart as I, Hope, navigated the aftermath of Caleb's confirmation at St. Luke's Methodist Church. At 38, I was still reeling from Vanessa's calculated slights, her whisper, "You really shouldn't be here," and her pointed claim of family, that excluded me. Her moves to edge me out of Caleb's life, my 12-year-old son, were escalating, each jab a public reminder of my place as the ex-wife in a community that once embraced me. Derek's neutrality and the congregation's whispers deepened my isolation, but Caleb's loyalty, his quiet "it's not fair," was a spark, urging me to stand firm. The pressure was mounting, a confrontation looming, and I was torn between fighting for my place and walking away to spare Caleb the fallout. The church parking lot was a flurry of umbrellas and hurried goodbyes, the air cool with the threat of rain. Caleb walked beside me, his confirmation tie loosened, his hazel eyes troubled. Vanessa and Derek were ahead, her laughter bright as she waved to Mrs. Carter, her hand on Caleb's shoulder earlier still burning in my memory. I clutched my purse, my inner monologue a tangle of anger and doubt. She's rewriting our family, and I'm letting her. What am I supposed to do? The weight of the congregation's gazes, pity from some, judgment from others, made me feel small, a shadow in Caleb's moment. I'd rebuilt my life as a nurse, a single mom, but Vanessa's polished presence made me question my worth, not just to them, but to myself. I considered walking away, skipping the post-confirmation brunch at the church hall, letting Vanessa have her stage. It's easier, my inner voice whispered, tempting me with peace. I could take Caleb for ice cream tomorrow, avoid the whispers, the tension. But something rooted me, his hand in mine, his fierce, "I don't like how she talks to you." He saw me, needed me, and abandoning this moment felt like abandoning him. I'm his mom, I thought, resolve hardening. I'd face her, not for the church's approval, but for Caleb, for the bond she couldn't claim. A flashback hit, raw and grounding. 2 years ago, after a custody hearing, Caleb and I sat in our duplex kitchen, his eyes red from crying. "Why can't Dad just be with us?" he'd asked, his voice small. I'd held him, my own tears falling, and said, "We're enough, buddy. You and me, we're a team." His trust had rebuilt me, his love a reason to keep going. Now, as we approached the church hall, I squeezed his hand, drawing strength from that memory. "She doesn't get to break us," my inner resolve declared, a quiet fire kindling. Inside the hall, the brunch was a spread of casseroles and coffee, the scent of bacon mingling with the hum of chatter. Vanessa held court near the buffet, her smile megawatt, Derek at her side, their family narrative on full display. Caleb tugged me toward a table, his voice low. "Mom, can we sit with Pastor Emily? She's cool." His choice was a small rebellion, a rejection of Vanessa's pull, and my heart swelled. "Sure, buddy," I said, guiding him to Emily's table, her warm eyes a haven. She greeted us, her voice kind. "Hope, Caleb, you both made today special." Her inclusion was a balm, but Vanessa's glance from across the room was a needle, her smile tightening as she noticed our table. I sat, my hands steady, preparing emotionally for what was coming. Don't react, don't give her the stage, I coached myself, but my heart raced, sensing the pressure building toward a public clash. Her jabs had been subtle, but they were escalating, each one bolder, and I knew she'd push again, testing my silence. Caleb leaned close, his voice a whisper, raw with feeling. "Mom, I'm sorry she's mean to you. You're my real family, not her." His words were a knife, cutting through my doubt, his loyalty a light in the storm. I hugged him, tears pricking, my voice soft. "You're mine too, Caleb. Always. Don't worry about her, okay? We've got this." He nodded, his smile shy but fierce, and I felt a shift, a resolve to protect him, not just from her words but from the pain of our fractured family. "He's too young for this," my inner monologue mourned, guilt rising, but his trust was a call to action, a reason to stay rooted. The brunch wore on, the hall's warmth clashing with the chill in my chest. Vanessa approached our table, her heels clicking, her voice bright but edged. "Caleb, you should join us for a toast. Everyone wants to celebrate you." Her invitation was a trap, a public claim, and I saw Mrs. Carter's approving nod, the Millers' curious glances. Derek stood behind her, his face unreadable, his silence a betrayal of its own. Caleb hesitated, looking at me, his jaw tight. "I'm good here," he said, his voice firm, a defiance that made my heart ache and sore. Vanessa's smile faltered, her eyes flicking to me, a flash of irritation she quickly masked. "Hope you don't mind, do you?" she said, her tone sweet but sharp. "It's just a family thing." The word family was a deliberate jab, and the table stilled, Pastor Emily's brow furrowing. I felt the congregation's eyes, the pressure building, a confrontation teetering on the edge. Walk away or fight. My inner struggle raged, fear and anger colliding. Walking away would spare Caleb, but it would cede ground, let her redefine us. Fighting meant risking a scene, hurting him, but silence felt like surrender. I took a breath, my voice calm but unyielding. "Caleb's where he wants to be, Vanessa. We're celebrating him too." Her smile tightened, her eyes narrowing, and I saw it. A subtle warning, a promise of more to come. "Of course," she said, turning away, but her glance back was a challenge, a sign she wasn't done. The hall's chatter resumed, but the tension lingered, a storm gathering force. I looked at Caleb, his hand squeezing mine, and felt hope flicker. He was my reason, my root. I was flawed, too quick to doubt myself, but resilient, ready to face her next move. The brunch ended, but the real battle was looming, its shape still hidden, its weight heavy in the church hall's fading light. The Boise clouds parted briefly, casting a fragile light through the stained glass of St. Luke's Methodist Church Hall, but the air inside was thick with tension. At 38, I, Hope, sat at a table with my 12-year-old son, Caleb, his confirmation brunch a battleground where Vanessa, my ex-husband Derek's new wife, waged a campaign to diminish me. Her earlier jabs, "You really shouldn't be here," her pointed family exclusions, had built to a crescendo, each one bolder, her polished smile a mask for her intent to claim Caleb's moment. I'd prepared to face her, choosing to stay for Caleb, my resolve hardened by his fierce loyalty. "You're my real family, Mom." Now, as the brunch neared its end, the pressure was unbearable, a public confrontation looming, and I braced myself, my heart a storm of fear, anger, and love, ready to hold my ground for the boy who needed me most. The hall was a hum of clinking forks and murmured thanks, the scent of coffee and casseroles fading as tables cleared. Caleb sat close, his tie undone, his hazel eyes scanning the room, sensing the undercurrent I couldn't shield him from. Vanessa stood near the buffet, her blonde hair catching the light, her laughter with Mrs. Carter a performance for the congregation. Derek was beside her, his face a mask of neutrality, his silence a weight I'd carried since our divorce. Pastor Emily at our table offered a kind smile, but even her warmth couldn't ease the knot in my chest. "She's going to push again," my inner monologue warned, a premonition born of her escalating slights. I'd considered walking away, sparing Caleb a scene, but his hand in mine, his quiet defiance, "I'm good here," had rooted me. This is our moment, I thought, resolve steadying me, though fear lingered. What if she hurts him to get to me? A flashback surged, raw and anchoring. 6 months ago at Caleb's school play, Vanessa had insisted on sitting with him backstage, her voice bright. "I'll be his cheerleader tonight, Hope." I'd let it go, seeing Caleb's discomfort, but later, he'd crawled into my lap, whispering, "I wanted you there, Mom." His need had pierced me, a reminder of my role, my promise to be his constant. Now in the hall, that promise burned, a vow to protect our bond, no matter the cost. "She doesn't get to rewrite us," my inner voice declared, a fire kindled by his trust. The moment came as Pastor Emily stood to close the brunch, her voice warm. "Let's thank our confirmans and their families for this beautiful day." The room clapped, eyes on Caleb and the other teens, but Vanessa seized the pause, her voice cutting through. "Pastor, could I say a quick word? For Caleb." Her tone was sweet, but her glance at me was sharp, a challenge. Emily nodded, surprised, and Vanessa stepped forward, her heels clicking, her smile a beacon for the congregation. "Caleb, we're so proud of you," she began, her voice carrying, drawing every eye. "Derek and I have watched you grow into such a fine young man, and today, you've made our family so happy." The word family was a deliberate blade, excluding me, and I felt the room shift. Mrs. Carter's approving nod, the Millers' murmurs, the weight of their judgment. Caleb stiffened beside me, his hand tightening in mine, his breath quick. Vanessa continued, her voice rising. "It's moments like these that remind us what family means, being there every day for the ones we love. Right, Caleb." Her words were a public claim, a shaming veiled as praise, painting me as absent, irrelevant. The hall stilled, eyes flicking to me, pity and curiosity mingling. My heart pounded, anger surging. How dare she? But I stayed composed, my face calm, my hand steady on Caleb's. "Don't react," I coached myself, knowing an outburst would play into her hands, make me the bitter ex. But the pain was raw, her attempt to erase me in Caleb's moment a wound I couldn't ignore. I was flawed, too quick to absorb their stares, but resilient, rooted by his love, and I wouldn't let her win. Before I could speak, Caleb stood, his chair scraping, his voice clear and trembling with emotion. "Stop, Vanessa. My mom's my family. She's always been there, every day, every night, when I was scared, when I needed her. You don't get to say she's not." His words were a thunderclap, raw and heartfelt, his hazel eyes blazing as he faced her, then turned to me, his voice softening. "I'm proud of you, Mom, for being here, even when it's hard." The hall froze, Vanessa's smile faltering, her face paling as the congregation absorbed his truth. Derek's jaw tightened, his eyes dropping, while Pastor Emily's nod was quiet approval. Mrs. Carter's gasp, the Millers' wide eyes, marked the shift. Caleb's words had rewritten the narrative, exposing Vanessa's cruelty, affirming my place. Tears burned my eyes, pride and love overwhelming me, his courage a mirror to the strength I'd doubted. "He sees me," my inner monologue marveled, the pain of her jab drowned by his truth. I stood, hugging him, my voice a whisper. "I'm proud of you too, buddy." Vanessa stammered. "Caleb, I didn't mean." But Pastor Emily cut in, her voice gentle but firm. "Thank you, Caleb, for your honesty. Let's close with a prayer." The moment passed, the brunch ending, but Caleb's words lingered, unforgettable, a beacon in the church's fractured light. Vanessa retreated, her mask cracked, Derek following, their family narrative shattered. I felt the congregation's eyes, softer now, some ashamed, but I didn't need their approval. Caleb's truth was enough, a validation of our bond, a blow to her campaign. As we left the hall, the Boise air cool with rain's promise, I held Caleb close, my heart a mix of triumph and sorrow. He shouldn't have to fight for me, my inner voice mourned, guilt lingering, but his smile, shy but fierce, was a gift. Vanessa's attack had been her undoing, her shame exposed by a boy's raw love, but I knew this wasn't the end. Her campaign would shift, her motives deeper than I'd grasped, and I needed to prepare, to protect us. The emotional climax had passed, but the stakes were higher, her defeat a spark for something more. I was changed, my resilience no longer quiet, my strength rooted in Caleb's truth. The church faded behind us, but the battle wasn't over, its next move a shadow I'd face with him, in the light of his unforgettable words. The Boise dusk settled soft and gray, the clouds parting to reveal a sliver of stars above our duplex, a quiet haven after the storm of St. Luke's Methodist Church. At 38, I, Hope, stood on the cusp of a new chapter, the echo of my son Caleb's words. "My mom's my family. She's always been there," ringing in my heart. Vanessa's public attempt to shame me at his confirmation brunch, her calculated claim to family that excluded me, had backfired when Caleb, at 12, spoke his truth, exposing her cruelty and affirming our bond. The congregation's shifted gazes, Derek's silence, and Vanessa's retreat were a victory, but the real triumph was internal, a reclamation of my strength, not through revenge but through peace, love, and the small victories that rebuilt me. Caleb's words were my turning point, a beacon guiding me to a place of empowerment, where I could finally let go of their judgment and embrace my own light. The days after the brunch were a blur of routine, night shifts at the hospital, Caleb's homework, our nightly talks over cocoa, but they carried a new clarity. Vanessa's attack had been a peak, her campaign to diminish me laid bare, but Caleb's courage had shifted the narrative, not just for the church but for me. He sees me, my inner monologue marveled, his words a mirror to the worth I'd doubted. I'd spent years absorbing the congregation's pity, Derek's betrayal, Vanessa's barbs, but Caleb's truth, "You're my real family," was a key, unlocking a strength I'd buried under their weight. I was flawed, too quick to shrink, too slow to claim my space, but resilient, rooted by his love, and I was ready to live that truth. I reflected on the church, its stained glass and whispered judgments, and realized I'd been seeking its approval, a ghost of the woman who'd sung in its choir. A flashback surfaced, tender and revealing. 5 years ago, before the divorce, I'd stood in St. Luke's kitchen, serving coffee after service, Mrs. Carter praising my selflessness. I'd smiled, but inside, I'd felt hollow, my nursing shifts, motherhood, and Derek's growing distance draining me. I gave too much, I thought now, regret softening into understanding. I'd let their expectations define me, but Caleb's words had freed me, reminding me I was enough, not for them, but for him, for myself. Small victories marked my healing. At the hospital, I volunteered for a mentorship program, sharing my nursing experience with new hires, my voice steady, my confidence growing. Colleagues noticed, one saying, "Hope, you're glowing lately." I smiled, thinking of Caleb, his truth a spark that lit my path. At home, I started a journal, writing not about the divorce or Vanessa, but about me. My dreams of studying art therapy, my love for Caleb's laughter, my hope for a life unshadowed by their gaze. Each word was a step, a reclaiming of the woman I'd been before their judgment. I met Caleb's eyes one evening, his math book open, his cocoa mug steaming. "Mom, you seem stronger," he said, his voice hesitant, his hazel eyes searching. His insight, so like mine, pierced me, and I knelt beside him, my heart full. "Your words at church, Caleb," I said, my voice soft. "They reminded me who I am. You're my strength, buddy, but I'm finding my own too." He hugged me, his arms tight, and I felt peace settle, a quiet empowerment born of his love. He shouldn't have had to fight, my inner voice mourned, guilt lingering, but his smile, shy but fierce, was a victory, a sign our bond was unbreakable. I promised myself to shield him, not by fighting Vanessa's games, but by living fully, showing him a mother who thrived. Derek called, his voice awkward, mentioning Vanessa's regret for the brunch. "She went too far, Hope," he said, a rare admission. I listened, my heart calm, and replied, "It's done, Derek. Just let Caleb be himself." I hung up, no anger, just closure. Vanessa's campaign had lost its power, her jabs irrelevant against Caleb's truth. The church, too, felt distant. Pastor Emily's kind email, Mrs. Carter's hesitant smile at the grocery store, hints of their shame, but I didn't need their redemption. My peace was internal, a victory won not by confronting them, but by choosing myself. I joined a community art class, a small act of courage, sketching landscapes that mirrored Boise's hills. Each stroke was a reclaiming, a nod to the girl who'd once dreamed of creating, before marriage and motherhood took precedence. My classmates, strangers who saw me as Hope, not the ex-wife, offered praise, their kindness a mirror to my growth. "I'm enough," my inner monologue affirmed, Caleb's words echoing, a mantra that drowned out Vanessa's whispers, the congregation's stares. One Sunday, I skipped St. Luke's, taking Caleb to a park instead, the Boise River glinting under a rare clear sky. We sat on a blanket, sharing sandwiches, his laughter bright as he tossed pebbles into the water. "Mom, I like this better than church," he said, his eyes sparkling. I nodded, my heart light, the absence of pews and whispers of freedom I hadn't known I craved. We're our own sanctuary, I thought, empowerment settling deep, a strength that needed no audience. That night, I stood in our duplex backyard, the stars faint above, a single daisy blooming in a pot I'd planted with Caleb. It was small, stubborn, its white petals catching the moonlight, a symbol of our resilience. I touched its leaves, my fingers gentle, and felt the echo of Caleb's words, "You're my real family. Merge with my own. I am enough." The daisy stood alone, yet whole, its quiet beauty a reflection of my healing, a subtle image that held the weight of my journey. I was hope, no longer defined by their shadows, my peace a light within, my son's love a star that would guide me forward, steady and true.